She was a cop chasing justice on a quiet winter night until the shadows turned their guns on her. Betrayed by her own department, wounded and trapped in a blizzard, her only ally was a stranger soldier and his loyal K-9. But as bullets tore through the snow, she discovered this was no random ambush. It was a plan written by darkness itself, and only faith could bring her out alive. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides in the darkest places. The morning mist rolled low across the pine ridges of Missoula, Montana, veiling the valley in pale silver light. The world smelled of frozen earth and resin, the quiet only broken by the crunch of boots over snow and the steady rhythm of a dog's breath. Officer Emily Carter, 32, moved through the frosted undergrowth with the quiet focus of someone who had learned to live with danger. She was tall for a woman, lean, her build sharpened by years of police training. Her face, half hidden beneath the hood of her winter jacket, bore faint lines of exhaustion around her blue eyes, eyes that had seen too much of humanity's darkness. Her auburn hair, tied into a low ponytail, brushed against the fur collar of her coat as she scanned the trees ahead. Beside her trotted Rex, a 7-year-old German shepherd with a black and tan coat thickened for the mountain cold. His amber eyes gleamed with alertness, his breath steaming in the chill air. He was a veteran of the K-9 unit, calm under pressure, loyal to the point of defiance. Emily often thought of him less as a partner and more as the one soul who truly understood the silences between her thoughts. They were tracking a suspect who had fled into the woods after a failed robbery at a downtown pawn shop. The footprints ahead were erratic, sometimes slipping, sometimes vanishing into the deeper snow. "Easy, boy," Emily murmured. Her voice came out soft, controlled, the kind of calm that hides tension beneath discipline. She had learned long ago, after losing a fellow officer during a drug bust, that panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. That memory, still sharp after 3 years, was a ghost she carried in her every breath. Rex paused suddenly, ears pricking, body stiffening. Emily crouched beside him, one gloved hand on his collar. Through the fog of her own breath, she heard it, a distant metallic click, a safety being released. The realization hit her a split second before the gunfire. The first bullet ripped through the silence, slicing bark from a pine trunk inches from her shoulder. "Down!" she shouted, pulling Rex behind a fallen log. Snow exploded around them as 2 more suppressed shots cracked through the cold air. The sound was wrong, too professional, too precise. Whoever was out there wasn't a desperate thief. They were hunters. Rex snarled, his instincts torn between obeying and defending. Another shot whizzed past, grazing his shoulder. The dog yelped, but stayed on his feet, trembling from pain yet refusing to retreat. Emily's heart clenched at the sound. "Stay, boy," she whispered, her voice breaking despite the command. She pressed her radio, but got only static. They were too far out. Then, through the chaos, a new sound rose, not gunfire, but the steady crunch of boots moving fast and sure. Out of the fog came a man, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a dark green tactical jacket and snow-dusted jeans. His presence was quiet, but commanding. The kind of calm that could only come from years of surviving the worst. His name was Cole Hunter, though Emily didn't know it yet. Cole had once been a Navy SEAL, a man forged by deserts and oceans, shaped by a decade of missions that no one would ever know. His face bore the marks of that life, angular, with a faint scar running from his jaw to the corner of his mouth. His stubble was silver-threaded, his gray eyes cold but alive with purpose. He had been wandering Missoula's outskirts for weeks, trying to find peace in isolation, though the ghosts of comrades lost in Afghanistan never stopped whispering in his mind. When he heard the suppressed gunfire echo from the forest that morning, instinct had taken over. Now he dropped low beside Emily, speaking in the low, deliberate tone of a man used to chaos. 2 shooters, maybe 3. Northeast Ridge. His gaze flicked briefly toward Rex, noting the blood matting the dog's fur. Your partner's hit. Emily didn't waste words. Can he move? He'll move, Cole said, almost admiring the dog's resolve. He's tougher than most men I've known. Then, without waiting for orders, he raised his head above the log, gauging the terrain. His movements were precise, no wasted effort, no panic. When one of the gunmen broke cover near a pine trunk, Cole acted. In a blur of motion, he rose, fired a single clean shot from his sidearm, and the man went down hard. The silence that followed was thin and brittle. The other 2 shooters melted into the forest shadows, retreating fast. Cole didn't chase. They're gone. For now. Emily exhaled shakily, adrenaline and cold making her hands tremble. Who the hell are you? She asked. He holstered his gun. Just a guy who hates ambushes. There was a ghost of humor in his tone, but his eyes stayed sharp, scanning the ridgeline. Emily pressed a hand over Rex's wound, her glove staining red. The dog's breathing was rough but steady. We need to get him out of here, she said, her voice tight with urgency. Cole nodded. Without a word, he shrugged off his jacket and tore part of the lining into strips. His movements were methodical, practiced, the kind of calm that comes only from training drilled into the marrow. He bound the wound, speaking softly to Rex, whose trembling eased under his touch. Emily watched him work, noticing the steadiness of his hands, the absence of fear. You've done this before, she said quietly. Too many times, he replied. His gaze met hers, gray against blue. For a moment, the forest seemed to fall away, leaving only 2 people bound by necessity and something deeper, the unspoken understanding of survivors. Rex nudged her hand with his nose, as if urging her to move. Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. All right, let's go. Cole helped her lift the dog onto his shoulders with surprising gentleness. Snow began to fall again, thicker now, muffling the world in white silence. As they made their way down the slope, Emily glanced back once more. Through the mist, she saw faint tracks, not random footprints, but patterns of discipline. Whoever those shooters were, they weren't small-time criminals. They were trained, patient, and deadly. A chill that had nothing to do with the weather ran down her spine. Something larger was at play here, and she had just stepped into its shadow. Cole noticed her expression. You know them? No, she said softly, but they knew me. The wind howled through the pines, swallowing her words. Behind them, the forest closed like a secret, a white graveyard for the truth they didn't yet understand. The sirens faded behind them as the city disappeared, swallowed by the slow white curtain of falling snow. The drive back from the woods was silent, except for the hum of the engine and the low, uneven breathing of Rex lying across the back seat. His right shoulder was wrapped in bandages made from Cole's torn undershirt. Every few minutes, the dog's tail gave a faint twitch, not in pain, but in stubborn defiance, as if refusing to admit weakness. At the wheel, Officer Emily Carter's gloved hands gripped tighter. Her mind replayed the ambush again and again, the muzzle flashes, the controlled bursts, the way those men had moved. Coordinated, military, not junkies, not random. Someone had wanted her dead. Beside her sat Cole Hunter, leaning forward with elbows on his knees, gray eyes fixed on the snow-coated road. His expression was unreadable, but tension radiated from him like heat. He had the posture of a man who never relaxed, his muscles wired to react, his thoughts moving faster than his words. The scars along his knuckles caught the faint dashboard light. They looked like they'd been earned one war at a time. "Hospital's 10 minutes out," Emily murmured. Cole shook his head. "No hospital. If those shooters were who I think they were, someone will come looking. You need someone you trust, someone off the record." Emily hesitated, then turned left down a narrow road leading to a small veterinary clinic hidden behind the frozen parking lot of an abandoned gas station. Its faded sign read, "Dr. Melinda Ray, Animal Health and Rescue." Melinda Ray was a short woman in her 50s, her silver blonde hair perpetually escaping its bun, streaked with years of sleepless nights. Her hands were strong but gentle, the hands of someone who had stitched more wounds, human and animal alike, than she cared to remember. Her eyes were sharp hazel, always kind, yet haunted by something. Years ago, she had been a trauma nurse in Afghanistan. She'd returned home to Missoula after a roadside explosion had taken her fiancé, a paramedic, leaving her with scars across her left arm and the habit of avoiding crowded rooms. When Emily and Cole carried Rex inside, Melinda looked up from her desk. For a moment, her face tightened, not from shock, but recognition. "You again," she said softly. "I told you, Emily, if that dog comes back covered in blood, I'm moving you both into the clinic." Emily managed a faint smile. "I'll take the couch by the window." Melinda's eyes shifted to Cole. "And who's this?" "Just someone who showed up when things went bad," Emily replied. Melinda studied him. The posture, the faded military jacket, the faint tremor in his left hand when the cold caught his scars. "Soldier?" "Once," Cole said simply. Melinda nodded without another question and gestured to the table. "Let's see the hero." Rex whined as they lifted him up. His fur was matted with blood, but the wound wasn't deep. A grazing bullet, narrowly missing bone. Melinda cleaned and stitched it in silence, humming softly under her breath. Emily watched every motion, guilt twisting in her stomach. She'd promised Rex no more near-death missions, no more chasing ghosts into the woods. Yet here they were again. When Melinda was done, she patted Rex's head. "He'll limp for a week, but he's tougher than most men I know." Her tone softened. "And so are you, Emily, but whatever you got yourself into, get out." Emily's jaw tightened. "I can't," Cole finally spoke. "You think this has to do with your department?" Emily nodded slowly. "Someone tipped them off. The suspect we chased, it doesn't add up. Dispatch said we were the only unit nearby, but the men who attacked us, they were waiting. I've been on the force 10 years, Cole. I know an inside job when I see one." Cole crossed his arms. "Then you got a problem that doesn't end with a bandage." Melinda poured coffee for the two of them. The clinic's lights flickered as the storm outside worsened. "You'll both freeze out there tonight. There's a storage room out back, clean blankets. Stay till morning." Emily hesitated. "Melinda, No arguments. I've patched up worse things than bullet holes, dear." That night, Emily sat alone on the clinic's front steps, wrapped in a blanket, watching snow pile against the glass door. Cole joined her quietly, holding 2 steaming mugs. "Coffee," he said, handing one over. She accepted it with a faint smile. "Thanks. I didn't get to thank you earlier for saving us." Cole stared out at the empty road. "Don't thank me yet. Those men will come back." Emily's breath clouded in the cold. "You said you think you know who they were. Why?" He hesitated, then said, "Because I've seen that kind of coordination before. Ex-contractors, mercenaries, private security firms that operate in the gray. Half legal, half not. I used to work near one called Red Meridian. They took dirty contracts overseas, ran black ops for corporations and governments that didn't want fingerprints. Some of their guys ended up in the States after the wars. If one of them's working for your department—" Emily's pulse quickened. "You think Ward could be connected?" Cole didn't answer immediately, but his eyes told her everything. Before she could respond, Rex lifted his head and growled softly. Low. Warning. Emily froze, scanning the street. Through the drifting snow, faint headlights appeared, slowing as they passed the clinic. A dark sedan. No markings. The engine idled for several seconds before driving off. Cole set down his cup. "You said you trusted your department?" "I used to," Emily whispered. They waited until the sound faded completely. Inside, Melinda turned off the main lights and locked the doors. "Whoever that was," she said quietly, "they weren't lost." The 3 of them sat in uneasy silence until the clock struck midnight. The storm finally began to calm, but a new weight hung in the air, something darker than the night itself. Emily stood, brushing the snow from her coat. "Tomorrow, I'm pulling every case file Ward's touched in the last year. I'll find out what he's hiding." Cole gave her a steady look. "And I'll find who sent those men." Rex shifted, rising stiffly to his paws, eyes bright despite the pain. He walked to the window, staring out into the white. Emily followed his gaze and froze. Across the street, half hidden behind the trees, a figure stood motionless, tall, wrapped in a dark coat, face obscured by the storm. He wasn't moving toward them. He was just watching. Cole stepped forward, reaching for his pistol, but when Emily blinked, the man was gone. Only snow and the faint outline of footprints leading back into the forest. She turned to Cole. "They found us." Cole's expression hardened, his voice low and certain. "No," he said, eyes narrowing toward the trees. They never stopped watching. The snow had thickened by nightfall, swallowing sound and light alike. The forest outside Missoula looked like a painting done in shades of white and sorrow. Inside a borrowed cabin deep among the pines, Cole Hunter stood by the window, the faint glow of a lantern sharpening the planes of his face. His eyes, cold gray under the shadow of his brow, swept the tree line. He was not a man who trusted silence. Silence had betrayed him before. Years ago in Kandahar, a moment of quiet had meant a trap, an explosion, and the death of his team. That memory never left him, and now it stirred again like an unwelcome ghost. Emily Carter sat near the hearth, wrapping a bandage around Rex's shoulder. The dog's breathing had steadied, though every movement made him wince. His thick fur was trimmed short where the bullet had grazed him, revealing a pale scar across strong muscle. Emily's hands moved carefully, her face lit by the flickering firelight. Beneath her calm surface, fear gnawed quietly. She was a woman who had built her strength from loss, Her father had been a sheriff who died on duty, her mother a nurse who drank herself to silence after his death. Emily had sworn she would not break like them, but tonight she could feel the same cracks beginning to form. "You should get some rest," Cole said without turning. His voice was low, roughened by too many years of command. "You've been awake for 20 hours. Emily tied the last knot in the bandage and sat back, exhaling. "I can't. Not until I know who they were." Cole's mouth curved slightly, not in amusement, but in grim understanding. "Then I'll find out." He moved away from the window, pulling on his dark field jacket. "Ward's name keeps coming up in everything you've told me. If he's dirty, he'll have a safe house somewhere near here." "Mason Ward?" Emily asked quietly. "You think he ordered the hit?" Cole nodded once. "He's the only one with the power to send professionals after a cop." Detective Mason Ward was a man who wore charm like a weapon. 45, tall, always in a pressed gray suit that smelled faintly of expensive cologne, he looked like someone the press would trust. His smile was warm, his eyes glacial. Years ago, he had been a rising star in the Missoula Police Department, a decorated officer, a war veteran from Iraq. But power and loss had warped him. After his wife's death in a drunk driving accident, something inside him broke. He'd learned to hide his bitterness behind protocol, using his badge as a shield for the rot growing underneath. Now, Ward sat in his downtown office, lit by the sterile blue of a desk lamp. Papers, case files, and an untouched cup of coffee surrounded him. His jaw was tight, his expression unreadable as he stared at a photograph on his monitor. Emily Carter and her K9, taken last year at a ceremony. He tapped the picture with one manicured finger, then leaned back in his chair. "You should have stayed quiet, Carter," he muttered. His phone buzzed, and he answered without hesitation. "Yes, he's alone now. The cabin by Pine Creek. You know what to do." Back in the forest, Cole followed an unmarked trail lit faintly by his flashlight. He had grown used to moving silently through places like this, places that hid both salvation and death. When he reached the cabin near Pine Creek, it looked abandoned, a crooked shadow under the weight of snow. Still, something in his gut twisted. The door was slightly ajar. The prints around it were wrong. Too many and too deliberate. Inside, the air was stale, and the smell of oil lingered. Cole's instincts screamed too late. The door slammed behind him. A spotlight flared to life, and the crackle of a stun grenade split the silence. The explosion of light and sound hit him like a hammer, driving him to his knees. Voices followed, male, controlled, professional. "Hands where we can see them!" Cole blinked against the white haze, vision swimming. He caught glimpses of black tactical gear, visors reflecting light. 3 men. One of them stepped forward, broad-shouldered, his weapon steady. "Package secured," the man said into his radio. A familiar voice echoed from the shadows. "You should have stayed out of this, Hunter." Cole turned toward the sound. Mason Ward stepped into the light, his coat immaculate despite the storm outside. His hair, a dark iron gray, was slicked back, his face smooth and cold. "You know," Ward said conversationally, "I admired what you did overseas. Discipline, precision. But you should have known better than to play hero in someone else's story." Cole's head throbbed, his hands zip-tied behind him. "You sent them after her," he said hoarsely. Ward's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You don't understand. Emily Carter got too close to something she shouldn't have. We're cleaning up loose ends. Nothing personal." Cole spat blood onto the floor. "Everything's personal when it's murder." Ward leaned down, lowering his voice. "You won't be around to prove it." Outside, the snowstorm howled louder, carrying sound away from the world. But deep in the distance, another rhythm broke through. Paws pounding over snow, steady and urgent. Rex was running. Emily had waited at the cabin for hours after Cole left, her nerves stretched thin. When Rex suddenly stood, ears alert, and let out a low growl, she knew. Something had gone wrong. She followed the dog into the blizzard, headlights cutting through the dark, the storm battering her windshield. Every instinct told her she was walking into danger, but she couldn't turn back. She owed Cole her life, and Rex's too. When she reached Pine Creek, the forest was silent again. Her flashlight caught the faint outline of boot prints leading toward a small wooden cabin. Smoke rose faintly from its chimney, the only sign of life. She parked the car and whispered to Rex, "Stay close." The snow crunched beneath her boots as she approached. The front door was closed now, locked from inside. She crouched behind a fallen log, watching through the window. Two men stood guard near the hearth, rifles slung across their chests. Cole was tied to a chair, blood streaking his temple. Ward paced in front of him, calm and deliberate, like a man rehearsing control. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears. "All right," she whispered to Rex. "We go in quiet." The dog's tail flicked once, understanding. Emily gripped her weapon, steadying her breath. But just as she prepared to move, a new noise rippled through the trees. The low hum of an approaching engine, heavy and slow. She turned her head toward the road, and in the distance, the glow of headlights emerged. Not one pair, but three. Black SUVs, unmarked. Her blood ran cold. Whoever was coming wasn't police backup. Emily exhaled, frost spilling from her lips. "It's not over," she murmured to herself. "It's just beginning." And as the first SUV stopped before the cabin, its door opening to reveal the silhouette of a tall man she didn't recognize, the faint light caught the glint of a badge. Not police, not FBI, but something else entirely. The storm intensified, snow whipping sideways as if the mountains themselves wanted to bury the truth beneath ice. The wind howled through the trees, muffling the faint sounds of engines as three black SUVs idled in front of the Pine Creek cabin. Inside, Cole Hunter sat bound to a wooden chair, blood streaking his temple where Ward's men had struck him. The faint smell of gun oil and pine resin hung in the air. He had counted 3 guards, 2 near the windows, 1 watching the back door. And he knew that sound of reinforcements when he heard it. Whoever had arrived wasn't local law enforcement. Detective Mason Ward stood near the fire, his face half lit, half devoured by shadow. The heat from the flames glowed against his gray hair and sharp cheekbones. His eyes were still like the surface of a frozen lake, hiding too much beneath. "You had your chance, Hunter," he said quietly, pacing. "You could have walked away, disappeared, but you kept digging." Cole's voice was hoarse but steady. "That's what men like you count on. People walking away." Ward smiled faintly. "People like me? You mean survivors?" He turned toward the window, watching as figures emerged from the SUVs. "And I intend to keep surviving." Outside, Emily Carter crouched behind a ridge, snow plastering her hair and jacket. Her blue eyes locked on the cabin, calculating every shadow. Rex crouched beside her, breathing hard but silent, his wounded shoulder trembling. She ran her fingers through his fur, whispering, "You stay with me, partner, just like always." The dog looked up at her with that unwavering loyalty that made her chest ache. The new arrivals moved with the precision of trained soldiers. 6 men in black combat gear fanned out, rifles ready, communicating with silent hand signals. At their head was a tall man with a square jaw and trimmed beard, streaked with silver. His name was Agent Noah Briggs, a federal operative attached to a covert division of the Department of Homeland Security. At 40, Briggs was built like a man who'd fought too many unseen wars. Broad-shouldered, scar near his right temple, the product of a failed raid years ago that had cost him his partner. Since then, he'd become detached, pragmatic, and ruthless when duty called. Ward stepped outside to meet him, his smile turning diplomatic. "Agent Briggs, I didn't expect you in this weather." Briggs's tone was flat, his eyes never leaving Ward's face. "You asked for a cleanup team. We're here to make sure there are no witnesses." Cole, listening through the thin wooden wall, felt his stomach turn cold. Cleanup team. That meant execution, not arrest. He twisted his wrists against the zip ties until his skin burned. Inside the cabin, one of Ward's hired men, a younger thug with a tattoo of a serpent crawling up his neck, looked nervous. "Sir, what about the woman, the cop?" Ward's gaze sliced through him. "She won't find this place in time." But Emily had already found it. She watched through binoculars as Briggs gestured toward the cabin, signaling his team to surround it. Her heart pounded, every instinct screaming to act. She knew she couldn't take all of them head-on, not in open ground, not with Rex wounded. She needed chaos. She reached into her pack, pulling out 2 smoke grenades, older models from the evidence locker, still functional. "All right," she murmured, "let's make it snow." She yanked the pins, rolled them down the slope. Within seconds, a thick wall of gray smoke swallowed the front of the cabin. The mercenaries shouted, disoriented. Emily moved like a shadow, sprinting low through the storm, Rex at her heel. The back guard turned just in time to see her silhouette through the haze. She fired once, clean, controlled, and he fell without a sound. Pushing open the rear door, she slipped inside, gun drawn. Cole's head jerked toward the sound. The guard beside him raised his rifle, but a sharp bark split the air. Rex lunged, clamping his jaws on the man's arm. The weapon clattered to the floor. Emily crossed the room in 3 strides, her pistol aimed straight at Ward's chest. "Step away from him," she ordered. Ward's lips curved in a thin smile. "You just don't quit, do you, Carter?" Cole used the distraction. In one swift motion, he snapped the chair's weakened leg free, slamming it into the nearest attacker's face. The room erupted into chaos. Emily ducked behind the overturned table as bullets tore into the walls. Rex darted across the floor, dragging Cole toward cover. Outside, Briggs's men saw the flashes through the smoke. "Shots fired!" one yelled. Briggs didn't hesitate. "Move in!" He and his squad stormed the cabin, the night exploding in muzzle flashes and shouts. Emily's ears rang. The confined space filled with gunpowder and smoke. She saw Ward retreat toward the front door, shouting something to Briggs. Cole fired after him, grazing his shoulder. Ward staggered but kept moving, clutching his wound, slipping into the storm. Briggs entered next, his assault rifle steady, his men spreading out with surgical efficiency. For a brief second, his gaze met Emily's across the chaos. Recognition flickered, confusion, then calculation. He'd seen her file before, years ago, after a failed case involving a trafficking ring. Back then, she'd accused a senior officer of corruption, and the case had vanished. Now he understood. "Carter," he said slowly, almost to himself. Cole grabbed Emily's arm. "We need to go. Now!" Rex barked once, urgent, ears pinned back. Emily nodded. She tossed another smoke grenade near the door, filling the cabin with choking haze. The three of them crashed through a broken window, tumbling into the snow. Behind them, Briggs's voice cut through the chaos. "Do not let them reach the tree line." Gunfire followed them into the night. Cole led the way down a ravine, his breath ragged. "There's an old logging road 1/2 mile east," he shouted over the wind. Emily followed, clutching Rex's collar, the dog stumbling but refusing to stop. The world blurred into snow and darkness. When they finally reached the frozen riverbed, Emily fell to her knees, gasping. Cole crouched beside her, scanning the ridge behind them. The forest glowed faintly from the fires at the cabin. They were alive. Barely. But Briggs's voice still echoed in its memory, cold and professional. "Make sure there are no witnesses." Cole turned to Emily. "They weren't just Ward's men. Someone higher is pulling the strings." Emily's breath came in shallow bursts. "Then we find out who. Whatever it takes." Rex pressed his head against her leg, eyes alert, watching the dark woods. Far off, through the snow, faint lights moved, not searchlights, but red and white strobes. A helicopter? Cole's expression hardened. "They're not done hunting us." The whir of rotor blades grew louder, sweeping across the trees like a heartbeat of war. And as the light passed over them, a metallic voice echoed through the wind, distorted, mechanical, and chillingly familiar. "Emily Carter, you're surrounded." The sound wasn't from the helicopter. It came from her own radio, the one she'd turned off hours ago. Someone was using her channel, someone who knew her name. The frozen river glistened under the pale moonlight as Cole, Emily, and Rex trudged through the wilderness. The storm had calmed, leaving behind a haunting quiet. Their breath fogged in the cold air, and each step crunched softly against the snow. In the distance, the sound of helicopter blades faded into silence. They had escaped, for now. Cole's eyes scanned the tree line, his instincts sharpened to the edge of paranoia. "We can't keep running blind," he muttered. "They'll regroup by dawn." Emily, limping slightly from an old wound reopened during the chase, replied, "Then we stop running. We find a way to hit back." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from determination. She had lost her badge, her trust, her home. All she had left was the truth. And Cole, a stranger who had become her only ally. They reached an abandoned ranger station at the edge of Flathead National Forest, a skeletal wooden structure half buried in snow. Cole forced the lock, and the three entered. The air smelled of pine and dust. Inside, Emily lit a lantern, its golden light casting long shadows over cracked walls and old equipment. Rex curled near the fire, his fur gleaming in the glow, his eyes half closed yet alert. Cole set down a worn duffel bag and opened it. Inside were fragments of evidence he had gathered, maps, photos, and a single flash drive. "Ward's got connections," he said quietly. "Red Meridian doesn't move without federal clearance. That means someone higher is pulling the strings. Maybe this Silas guy Briggs mentioned." Emily looked up sharply. "Silas?" Cole nodded. "Briggs said the name before the ambush. I think Ward's just a pawn." The mention of Briggs drew a shadow over her face. He had that same look all the corrupt ones have, the calm of a man who thinks he's untouchable. They worked through the night, piecing together threads from memory and data. On the flash drive were encrypted files labeled T-88 and Carter Operation. Emily leaned closer, heart racing. "That's my name." Cole's jaw tightened. "They were tracking you long before the ambush. Someone inside your department fed them everything." Emily sat back, silent, staring at the flickering lantern. "Ward framed me, ruined my record, and almost got Rex killed. If he's still breathing, I'll find him." Cole looked at her, his tone calm but deliberate. "Then we don't just find him, we make him come to us." By dawn, they had a plan. Cole would contact Briggs using a secure frequency he had memorized from his time in the Navy, one that bypassed conventional channels. They'd leak false intel suggesting Emily had a hard drive containing every transaction between Ward, Briggs, and Silas. The location? The ranger station itself. It was a trap, but this time it was their trap. They prepared the ground with military precision. Cole rigged tripwires with old flares and set a hidden camera feed to record the clearing. Emily cleaned her sidearm, her fingers trembling slightly as she reassembled it. "It's been a long time since I've gone on the offensive," she said quietly. Cole gave her a faint smile. "You'll remember. People like us don't forget how to fight. We just forget why we started." As evening fell, the forest grew eerily still. Snowflakes drifted through the trees, the calm before a storm of a different kind. Rex stood at the window, ears perked, eyes reflecting the firelight. He had sensed the tension, the quiet hum of danger that animals always feel before humans do. At midnight, headlights cut through the darkness. A convoy approached, 3 SUVs and 1 armored van. Cole crouched near the window, rifle in hand. "Right on schedule," he whispered. From the lead vehicle stepped Agent Noah Briggs, his face half hidden under a black hood. Behind him, men in tactical gear fanned out. And then, through the snow, came Mason Ward, arm in a sling, expression colder than the air itself. "I told you she'd take the bait," Ward said. "Carter always plays hero." Briggs didn't reply. His gray eyes swept the tree line, wary. "Something's off. Too quiet." Ward smirked. "You're paranoid." "Paranoia keeps me alive," Briggs muttered. Inside the cabin, Emily's pulse quickened. "That's our cue." Cole nodded. "Not yet." He waited until Briggs's men reached the perimeter, then flipped a switch. Flares erupted around the clearing, bathing the night in red light. The mercenaries shouted, scattering. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the valley. Cole moved like a ghost, firing in controlled bursts, forcing them into confusion. Emily provided cover from the window, her aim steady despite the chaos. Rex growled low, pacing near the door, ready to strike if anyone breached. Ward ducked behind a tree, yelling into his radio, "We're compromised! Pull back!" But Briggs didn't move. His eyes locked onto the cabin. "No," he said coldly, "we finish it." He signaled 2 men to flank left, moving toward the rear. Cole saw them too late. Grenades rolled under the porch. "Down!" he shouted. The blast shattered the windows, throwing Emily to the floor. She coughed through smoke, ears ringing. Cole dragged her up. "We can't hold here." They stumbled out the back, disappearing into the trees. Rex followed, limping but determined. Behind them, the cabin burned bright against the snow, a beacon of defiance. From the wreckage, Briggs emerged, his coat singed, face streaked with soot. He watched the flames with a grim satisfaction. "They think they can outsmart me?" he said quietly. "Let them run. I'll find them." But as he turned away, his calm crackled. A voice came through, a calm, composed man with an accent too refined to be local. "Agent Briggs, the operation has exceeded its purpose. Retrieve the drives. Eliminate loose ends." Briggs frowned. "And the detective?" A pause. Then the voice replied, "Ward served his function. End him too." Briggs looked toward the injured detective crawling from behind a tree, his eyes wide with realization. "What?" Ward gasped. "You—" Briggs's pistol fired once. The sound was swallowed by the storm. Hours later, miles away, Cole and Emily crouched by a half-frozen creek. Emily stared at the horizon, her face pale in the moonlight. "Did you see him? Ward, he was there." Cole nodded grimly. "Not anymore. Briggs just tied up his own loose ends." Emily clenched her fists. "Then he's next." Cole opened the flash drive again, the decrypted files glowing faintly on his laptop screen. "We're close," he said. "Silas isn't just a name. It's an entire network. If we can expose this, Briggs won't be the only one to fall." Rex lifted his head suddenly, ears twitching. Cole froze, listening. In the distance, across the frozen creek, a red laser dot appeared on the snow. Steady, aimed directly at them. Cole pushed Emily down. "Sniper!" The shot cracked through the night. The echo of the gunshot vanished into the forest like a ghost. Snowflakes drifted silently over the frozen creek where Cole, Emily, and Rex lay pressed against the icy ground. Cole's breath came out in short bursts, his body tense, scanning the ridgeline for movement. The sniper's shot had missed by inches, splintering the bark above Emily's head. "We're pinned," he muttered. "He's trained, military, just like them." Emily's pulse pounded in her ears, the cold biting through her jacket. Rex crouched low beside her, his black and tan fur bristling, his golden eyes fixed on the ridge. The dog gave a low growl, a sound more primal than anything human could muster. Cole raised his hand in a silent command for stillness. Seconds stretched like hours. Then another glint in the snow. Cole fired. The rifle's recoil echoed through the valley. Silence followed. The shot had found its mark. They moved quickly, following the trail up the slope until they reached a fallen pine. Behind it, a man lay sprawled in the snow, his rifle beside him. He was tall, lean, his face pale and sharp like carved stone. The insignia tattooed on his wrist, a crimson serpent coiled around a dagger, confirmed Cole's suspicion. "Red Meridian," he muttered. Emily knelt beside the body, frowning. "They sent him to make sure we didn't leave this forest alive." Cole's eyes hardened. "Then we'll make sure Silas knows we're still breathing." By dawn, they reached a small mountain town. White Elk, population barely 200. The streets were buried under snow, the windows shuttered, but smoke from the diner still rose in thin gray curls. Inside, warmth and the faint scent of coffee greeted them. The place was run by Harriet Bloom, a heavy-set woman in her 60s with curly red hair and sharp green eyes that had seen too much. She moved like someone used to hard winters, every motion practical. "You two look like hell," she said, pouring coffee without asking. "And your dog looks like he's fought a bear." "Close enough," Emily replied with a tired smile. Harriet eyed Cole's blood-stained jacket. "There's a vet clinic 2 blocks down. Used to patch up sled dogs. I'll call him." "No calls," Cole said firmly. "Please." Something in his tone made her pause. She nodded, lowering her voice. "All right, honey, you can use the back room to rest, but if trouble follows you, you didn't come here, understand?" "Understood." Emily said softly. Hours passed in uneasy quiet. Emily cleaned Rex's paws, whispering to him as snow fell softly outside. Cole sat by the window, his rifle resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the road. He had that distant look again, the one soldiers wore when they were already somewhere else. Emily broke the silence. Cole, what happens after this? When we stop Silas? If we stop him? He gave a small, humorless smile. People like me don't have afters. We just get to the next fight. She looked at him for a long time. Then maybe it's time to change that. Before he could answer, headlights appeared in the distance. 3 black SUVs rolled into town, slow and deliberate. Cole's expression hardened. They found us, Rex growled, rising to his feet. Emily checked her pistol, her hand steady now. Then we ended here. Harriet emerged from the kitchen, gripping an old hunting shotgun. You kids aren't doing this alone, she said firmly. Cole gave her a look, part gratitude, part warning. Stay behind the counter. Whatever happens, don't come out. The vehicle stopped outside the diner. Doors opened, boots crunched on ice, and a figure stepped forward. Agent Noah Briggs. His once impeccable coat was torn, his beard flecked with frost, eyes shadowed by sleeplessness, and something darker, guilt. He called out, his voice steady, but edged. Cole Hunter, Officer Carter, I'm giving you one chance. Hand over the drives. Emily stepped into the doorway, snow swirling around her. You killed Ward. You followed orders from a ghost. Who's pulling your strings now? Briggs's jaw tightened. You don't understand. Silas isn't a man you can fight. He's an institution. He owns everything. Law enforcement, contractors, judges. He'll erase you like you never existed. Cole's voice cut through the wind. Then let's make sure he bleeds first. Briggs hesitated. For a second, something human flickered in his eyes. A trace of the man he might have been before corruption hollowed him out. I didn't want this, he said quietly, but you left me no choice. Gunfire erupted, windows shattered, snow exploded from the ground. Cole returned fire with surgical precision, dropping 2 of Briggs's men. Emily moved behind a snowplow, firing controlled bursts. Rex leapt forward, knocking down an attacker before retreating to cover. The battle raged through the empty streets, flashes of orange fire cutting through the white storm. Briggs advanced, his rifle steady, but Cole met him head-on. They collided near the frozen fountain in the square, fighting hand to hand, each strike echoing years of violence and regret. Briggs landed a blow to Cole's ribs. Cole countered, knocking him to his knees. Emily emerged from cover, aiming her weapon. It's over, Briggs. Briggs looked up, blood on his lips, a faint smile twisting his face. You think killing me will stop him? Silas will replace me by morning. Before Emily could respond, the whir of helicopters filled the air. Floodlights bathed the square in harsh white. Voices shouted through loudspeakers, FBI, drop your weapons! Emily froze. Agents in dark jackets poured into the street, weapons trained. A tall woman stepped out from the lead chopper. Agent Dana Holloway, mid-40s, dark skin, hair in a tight braid, and the kind of authority that silenced chaos. She'd been with Internal Affairs for years, known for dismantling corruption rings and surviving more than one assassination attempt. Her gaze swept the carnage before settling on Emily. Officer Carter? She called, her tone steady. We've been tracking Silas for months. You just did half our job. Briggs laughed weakly. You're late, as usual. Holloway walked forward, her expression unreadable. Briggs, you're under arrest. As for Silas, he's done running." She tossed a tablet toward Cole. On its screen, live footage played, federal teams raiding a mansion, men in suits being handcuffed. Among them, a tall, silver-haired man in a tailored coat. Silas. His expression calm, almost bored, as if he'd known it would end this way. Emily exhaled shakily, lowering her gun. Cole watched the screen, the faintest relief crossing his face. "It's over," she whispered, but Holloway shook her head. "Not yet. There are still layers to peel, but you've given us what we needed." Briggs was led away, his shoulders slumped, the defiance gone. Emily knelt beside Rex, stroking his fur. "You did good, boy," she murmured. Days later, the snow began to melt. In the quiet outskirts of White Elk, Emily stood outside a small cabin overlooking the valley. The world was silent again. She wore civilian clothes now, no badge, no gun. Just peace. Cole appeared behind her, still in his worn jacket, though the scars on his face seemed softer in daylight. "Heading out?" she asked. He nodded. "Maybe north, somewhere quieter." She smiled faintly. "You're terrible at quiet." He chuckled. "Guess I'll have to learn." Rex padded between them, tail wagging. Emily looked down at the dog, then back at Cole. "You could stay, you know. White Elk's big enough for ghosts." He met her gaze, gray eyes steady. "Maybe I will." The wind whispered through the pines as the sun broke over the mountains, turning the snow to gold. The war was over, the wound still deep, but for the first time there was warmth. Rex barked softly, and the sound carried across the valley like a promise. When the last echoes of gunfire fade and the snow begins to melt, what remains is not the pain nor the scars. It's the quiet miracle of survival. Sometimes God doesn't calm the storm. He calms his children in the middle of it. Emily, Cole, and Rex walked through the fire, through betrayal and loss, and found something far greater than victory. Faith. Not the kind spoken in churches, but the kind whispered in the stillness of the soul when all hope seems gone. Perhaps that is God's greatest miracle, that even in the coldest winter, He plants seeds of spring in the human heart. And maybe, just maybe, every act of courage, every tear shed for love, every life saved when no one is watching, those are His fingerprints upon this broken world. If this story touched your heart, if you believe miracles still walk among us, share this story with someone who needs hope tonight. Comment Amen below to stand with those who still believe that faith can change the darkest night into dawn. And before you go, take a moment to subscribe and stay with us as we continue to tell stories where courage meets grace, where love overcomes fear, and where miracles still find their way home. May God bless you and your family with peace, strength, and the quiet certainty that no one who walks with faith ever walks alone.